This is a classic story of Washington corruption. Now, I'm going to bring it to you using several different sources, mainly the New York Times. HuffPo also comes in here. Now, I tell you that the corruption is bipartisan. This is a very good example of that. This is mainly about the Democrats. Yes, there have been many instances where I can point to where Republicans practice crony capitalism and they funnel money to their donors. There are hundreds of those examples. But there are many of those examples that also apply to Democrats, and this is a very good one. So let me show it to you. First, Eric Lipton and Liz Moore from the New York Times explain that in the span of a mere 11 days this month, $1 billion in future federal tax payments vanished. Well, that's a nice little mystery. Where did they vanish to? Now, you have to understand something. Over the course of decades, the tax burden has been moved on to the American people. It used to be that corporations paid a much bigger share of federal taxes. That's been whittled down now, and guess who's paying more taxes? You and I. The American people have had the tax burden shifted onto them. And this is one of many ways that that happens. The corporations wind up getting little loopholes put in there by politicians who they legally bribed to make $1 billion in tax payments disappear. And well, you got to make up that $1 billion. Where's it going to come from? You guessed it, you. So let's talk about how this one happened. So they had a big bill now that they snuck this into. As congressional leaders were hastily braiding together a tax and spending bill of more than 2,000 pages, lobbyists swooped in to add 54 words that temporarily preserved a loophole sought by the hotel, restaurant, and gambling industries, along with billionaire Wall Street investors that allowed them to put real estate in trusts and avoid taxes. Now, the bill itself was actually 2,009 pages. When reporters asked congressmen coming out on the House side, hey, do you know about this 54-page provision that takes out $1 billion and basically hands it to the richest people in the country? They're like, no, I never even read it. You think they read the whole 2,009 pages? Sometimes Republicans complain about that, right? Well, their staffers at least are supposed to read it and summarize it for the Democrats and the Republicans. No, they're not even doing that. They're like, oh, yeah, whatever you say, man. Okay, let's sign off on it. Let's go forward. It doesn't matter. You help your donors, I help my donors. That's what the whole point of the bill is, helping the American people. That's so naive of you. You got to understand the way Washington works. That's what they'll tell you. So now this particular giveaway is an interesting one. A lot of these restaurants and hotels and casinos have a ton of real estate. They have property. Now, they'd like to be able to spin that off, sell it, and help other parts of their companies, especially because a lot of them have a ton of debt like Caesars does. Now, when you sell a piece of property, what happens? Well, you have taxes because you made money on that. That's the most normal thing in the world. That's how taxes works. If you sold your home and you'd made a profit on that home over the course of however many years, you'd pay some taxes on it. That's because you're a regular American. These guys say, I don't want to pay taxes on it. I want to be able to sell it and not pay taxes. Well, what the hell? How would you do that? Well, you just write it into the law. You just cheat. You just make the cheating legal. And you bribe a bunch of politicians, which is also now legal, and that's how you do it. So, by the way, this type of deal, to give you a sense of the magnitude of how much money it affects, it's been done just 15 times since 2010, but that 15 times that it did, it affected $21.7 billion. So we're talking about a ton of money here. When that much money is involved, that's when the lobbyists swoop in, as the New York Times writes in. And while you're not looking, they take all the goodies. So, in this case, how'd they do it in specific? Well, let's explain. They won support from the top Senate Democrat, Harry Reid of Nevada, who responded to appeals from executives of casino companies, politically powerful players, and huge employers in his state, and the lobbyists even helped draft the crucial language. And New York Times shows sometimes they took literal exact phrasing from the lobbyists and put it into the bill. Oh, so much trouble to try to make it into your own language when you're obviously just doing whatever the hell the lobbyists tell you. Just take the whole words and phrases and sentences and paragraphs and put them into the bill. Who cares? The lobbyists write the bill anyway. The American people will never find out. Yeah, we're finding out. This is what you're doing, and we know it. Now, Harry Reid has an excuse. He's like, oh, well, they're large employers in my state, the casinos. That's why I'm doing it. Now, that's true. They are large employers in his state. That is part of his rationale. The other part is he got a ton of money for doing it. Not personal money that he's putting in his pocket. That'll be after he retires. when he'll magically find a job as a lobbyist for people like casinos, and they'll pay him millions of dollars. That's happened over and over again. Yes, a ton of times to Democrats, Evan Bayh, Chris Dodd. Oh, I'm not going to be a lobbyist. Oh, look at this. The Motion Picture Association gave me $2 to $3 million a year to be their lobbyist. What a surprise. Do Democrats do it? Hell yeah, they do it. So in this case, they're giving him campaign contributions to him and to other Democrats. So let's explain that part. And who are the people in specific giving this money to Harry Reid? Some executives at companies with the most at stake are also big campaign donors. Say it with me. Of course. For example, the family of David Bonderman, a co-founder of TPG Capital, has donated $1.2 million since 2014 to the Senate Majority PAC, a campaign fund with close ties to Mr. Reid and other Senate Democrats. TPG Capital has large holdings in Caesars Entertainment and helps run a Texas-based energy company, both of which stand to benefit from the last-minute change. You don't say. They give $1.2 million to Harry Reid and the Democrats, and then they get a $1 billion tax break in return. This is exactly how Washington runs. Now, to be fair to them, the bribe was slightly larger than that, so let's go into more details here from Huffington Post now. As Senate Majority Leader, Reid directly solicited a contribution from Bonderman. Sources present at a May 1st, 2013 meeting at the Milken Institute said. The private equity giant then gave more than $1 million to a super PAC connected to Reid, they explain. And let's get more into the details now. Often, after a lawmaker or candidate asks for the legal limit, a fundraiser connected with a super PAC will follow up. Bonderman got the message, and he and his wife, Lori Michaels, came through over the course of 2014. The couple made 7 contributions to Reid's Senate Majority PAC in 2014 for a total of $1,025,000, and threw another $150,000 through a firm called Bonderman Ops, LLC. The first 2 contributions, totaling $340,000, came from Michaels before Bonderman began giving that cycle under his own name. So now they're about to funnel more money in. I'm going to tell you how they do that, but understand this part. Harry Reid and any other politician, again, Republicans and Democrats all do this same trick. They come in and they go, now the legal limit is $5,400. So all I'm doing is asking for $5,400 on a $1 billion deal. And then they walk out and their super PAC comes in and goes, who are you kidding? Give me the money. Now the super PAC, the reason they do that is the super PAC is not supposed to coordinate with the politicians. So they say, oh, what a wonderful coincidence. Right after you spoke to that politician, his super PAC came in, either immediately thereafter or a day after, but no one is unclear about what's happening. Maybe it's even a week after. And they go, now give us the real money, Lebowski, because you can give unlimited money to a super PAC, and that's when the millions of dollars come in. Now, how does this work? Well, if you didn't understand the wink and you only gave the $5,000, next time you don't get a meeting and you don't get this inserted into the bill. And then you go, oh, knucklehead, they didn't mean 5,000, they meant millions. Next time you give millions, voila, 54 pages inserted into a 2,000-page bill, and all of a sudden, there's your $1 billion tax break. We have legalized bribery. Understand this. We have got to change this. Now, our organization is Wolfpack, wolf-pac.com. We fight against this, and we're going to get an amendment to fix this. But fight in any way you want. But understand that they stole our democracy in the middle of the night, and this is the biggest highway robbery in American history. They're stealing our money as we speak. Now, more details. The couple, whose wealth is estimated at $2.6 billion, that's the Bondermans, also donated $455,000 to the Senate Majority PAC in the 2012 elections, and has given hundreds of thousands to super PACs run by Emily's List and the League of Conservation Voters. Great reporting by Ryan Grimm and Paul Blumenthal there. So, okay, now understand how this works. So now, all of a sudden, we're not talking about $1 million, we're talking about a couple $1 million. But they're worth $2.6 billion, and they're about to make so much more money. So $2 million is a great investment. And then they get a return on that investment. They're business people. It makes sense. If you could buy a politician and it was going to pay you 100-fold, 1,000-fold, most people would probably do it too. That's why we shouldn't let them do it. We should fix the laws. We should fix our Washington to make sure that they can't buy our politicians. So the last piece of this trick is it's not just Harry Reid's super PAC and the Democratic super PAC. They are a progressive organization who do wonderful things like Emily's List, and in this case they also mention League of Conservation Voters, but they also funnel a lot of money to Democrats to support their causes. They do genuinely want the Democrats to support their causes. They know that if the Democrats win, they're more likely to have their causes supported than if Republicans win. That part is all true. The part you don't know about is a lot of the donors, the millionaire and the billionaire donors, funnel money through those organizations so it could also get to Democrats. Now, if you think they're not doing that on the Republican side, you're not paying attention. They have perfected that art on the Republican side. So it is not the Democrats that are exclusively at fault. It is not the Republicans at fault. And they're not really fighting each other. They're fighting us. So you got to learn how to fight back. First part is knowledge. Now, of course, they deny all of this. They, when asked, both Ms. Orthman, who's a spokeswoman for Senator Reid, and the spokeswoman for Mr. Bonderman said, it would be wrong to presume his contributions to Mr. Reid had played any role in the help his companies received. Now, people in Washington might believe that or pretend to believe it. Do any of you believe it? Oh, they gave $2 million out of the goodness of their heart to this random legislator, Harry Reid, because they really liked his policies. And then they wound up getting a tax break that affects them tremendously. It's $1 billion tax break, which they have a huge percentage of because they own Caesars and all these other companies that are affected. That's just a coincidence, they assure you. Not a single American believes that lives outside of Washington, D.C. Okay, if you weren't sure, by the way, what is the informal name of this carve-out loophole? It's called the Caesars TXU carve-out. That's the two companies of Bonderman. So it's not like they don't know it in Washington either. That's the name they call it. So yeah, they know it. They're just trying to hide it from you. Okay, now don't get me wrong. As I've said now over and over, it's not just Harry Reid. It's politicians on both sides getting greased in this particular instance as well. A well-connected lobbyist told the New York Times they have someone in just about everyone's district. These people had a lot of political capital. So those lobbyists are everywhere. They cost a lot of money, but again, the return on investment is fantastic. So they don't really care how much money it costs because they're going to make 100-fold that. Do you have a lobbyist in every district? No, you don't, right? That's why maybe we should have free and fair elections and not let the lobbyists and the donors control our politicians. Private financing of elections leads to the private people who finance those elections getting all the money. It's the most obvious thing in the world. It's capitalism on steroids, where capitalism gets to buy democracy and gets to buy our government. And everybody's involved. So one of the people lobbying in this effort was David Lugar. Who's David Lugar? He's the son of former Senator Rich Lugar from Indiana. I mean, look, then there's the kids of Orrin Hatch. There was the wife of Norm Coleman in the past. They get all the family members. That's another way to funnel money. Hey, not only are you going to get a lot of campaign contributions, but we're going to funnel it through your son's firm, and he's going to get paid a lot of money at his job for doing such a good job of lobbying. Everybody in Washington gets rich at your expense. All right, and of course, it's not just Caesars. Other casinos and entities are taking advantage of this law as well. They explain other words were sliced from the package that would have blocked certain types of property transfers to real estate investment subsidiaries, as MGM Resorts is planning to do with 7 of its Las Vegas resorts, making it easier for the company to move ahead. Wow, isn't that lovely? Everybody gets paid. And it's not just this one provision, of course. There was another $4.2 billion provision in there that was snuck in to help other real estate companies that Republicans and Democrats agreed to. What a funny thing. I thought they were fighting about everything, couldn't get anything passed. That's what I hear on television all the time. It turns out they can't agree on one thing, screwing us so that their rich donors get paid. Now, the $4.2 billion provision is even, obviously, 4 times bigger than this one. We're just showing you one of the cases of corruption because it's a pretty good one. And even in this bill, it wasn't just about the casinos and it wasn't just one-sided in terms of just that one provision. It's a pork barrel project. Now, I'm told that Republicans are against pork barrel projects, yet Susan Collins, who is a Republican of Maine, put in $1 billion for a Navy destroyer that the Defense Department says they don't need. They don't want it. Susan Collins is like, who cares what the Defense Department wants? We're going to waste $1 billion with something I know for a fact you don't need. And why is she going to do that? Again, the same excuse as Harry Reid. Oh, well, it's going to get built in my home state of Maine, and it's a lot of jobs, and that's true. Also, the defense contractors who are going to get stinking rich off of that might happen to contribute to her and her Super PAC and to Republican Super PACs. And that's how this game is played. One last example from this same bill. Now we go to Thad Cochran, who's a Republican from Mississippi. He inserted different language. In this case, language inserted in the federal budget over the federal administration by Senator Cochran directed the Coast Guard to build a $640 million national security cutter in Mississippi that the Coast Guard says it does not need. So the waste in the Pentagon is insane. That what the Pentagon has asked for is enormously wasteful. And on top of that, these politicians add all this pork that they didn't even want, the Pentagon didn't even want. The Coast Guard in this case, their spokesperson said, if we're funded for it and Congress says you're going to have a ninth cutter, I guess that's how it goes. But we're good with 8. Doesn't matter. We're going to waste that $640 million anyway. Why? Thad Cochran could brag to his local, citizens in Mississippi and say, I got you jobs. I helped the local employers. But then the two things he doesn't tell you. One, defense contractors give him a lot of money because they're going to make a ton of money. Two, the local businesses fund all these politicians in the first place. So those local businesses who are, yes, going to hire a couple more people are going to make even more money, and they also funnel campaign contributions to Thad Cochran. Now, if democracy worked as it should, some of these politicians would be arguing to bring those jobs to their home states, and that's perfectly great. That's a normal part of democracy. But you wouldn't have the other part, the part where, yeah, I want the casinos and the Navy destroyers to get built and have more jobs in my states, but I also want the money, Lebowski, and I want you to funnel millions of dollars into my pocket, into my campaign's pockets, into my Super PAC's pockets, and eventually to my family's pockets, and when I retire, definitely millions of dollars into my own pocket. This is corruption 101. Understand what you're dealing with. This is our government. You got to overturn it. This is business as usual, and I'm sure that the politicians in D.C., if they see this video, they'll be outraged. But you don't understand, Cenk. That's what everybody's doing. No, I do understand. And that's the problem. Everybody's doing it. Throw them out. Throw the bums out. But this isn't going to get solved in normal election cycles because elections are funded by those same private interests. You're going to throw those bums out and new guys are going to come in who are all bought by the same guys. You've got to change the system. There is a virus in the system and we got to write it out. What do? You write new code. That is called an amendment. We've done it 27 times in America. Every generation has done it. We need to do it in this case to get our democracy back. We think the right answer is Wolf PAC. Join us at wolf-pac.com. But whatever you think is the right answer, you got to fight against this corruption if you're a real American. Real Americans believe in democracy. Let's go get it back.